Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that didn't. Today's card, the closest the game has gotten to Pankratops 2, Kashtira Fenrir. Fenrir was first released in Darkwing Blast in 2022 as an ultra rare, with 2 reprints to date as I make this video. The first would come as an ultimate rare print in OTS Pack 21 in 2023, and again as a prismatic secret rare in the 2023 Megatins. As I make this video, it has spent no time on the ban list, although that may change in the future, because Konami does just be doing things sometimes. A level 7 Earth attribute psychic type monster with 2400 attack and 2400 defense, its effect reads: if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each of the following effects of Kashtira Fenrir once per turn. During your main phase, you can add 1 Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand when this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, you can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, banish it face down. Fenrir is a fun card to discuss, because as a standalone card, there's one discussion for it, and in regards to the context of Kashtira, there's kind of a whole other discussion, isn't there? On release, Fenrir quickly saw play, with the card being deemed the new Pankratops for the game, whether or not that was something everyone agreed with. Before Kashtira had got its second wave of support, the deck was much less impactful, especially when you remember that this released just 2 weeks before Magnificent Mavens and the Ishizu cards did. Due to this, there was very little experimentation with Kashtira as a standalone deck, as once the Ishizu cards dropped, so did any deck not named Tier Shizu from the majority of people's minds. Still, in the weeks before the imminent Tier 0 deck, Fenrir would show up in a number of topping decks due to its strength and splash ability. There really isn't a single deck that played this card and did super well with it, because by itself it's just a very strong card, and one that doesn't hinder any deck's board going first or going second. As such, there's no need to delve into the specifics of the decks that were playing this, because I don't really care to describe every single meta deck from like October 22 up until now. Fenrir is so great because you get to just throw it onto your board for free. There's no need for the opponent to be involved at all, like Pankratops, who will need the opponent to have more monsters than you. Fenrir just gets to have its presence on the board because you have no monsters. This makes it much less bricky in the main deck compared to Pankratops, because even if you go first, you can still make your plays with it, such as using its effect to add any Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand, including a copy of itself, because for whatever reason, Konami let this search itself, which just adds another extra layer of usefulness to it, because you can search a copy of itself, either as a backup if the opponent were to manage to break your board, or even just as a free extra piece of discard fodder. And that's without getting into the best part, the removal effect, if the opponent uses a monster's effect. It's a targeted removal, but it's banished face down, which prevents a majority of the effects of monsters that would activate if you were to remove them in other ways. No graveyard effects or effects on destruction, or even effects when banished, because these cards are being banished face down. Not to mention, going second, it does a great job to help pick apart a board. You can drop Fenrir, then use another card, be it summoning a monster or activating a spell card, and then if the opponent uses a negate or a piece of disruption in the form of a monster effect, you can either bait a secondary negate or disruption with Fenrir's effect, or just remove a problem card from the field. And that is remove a problem card, not just a monster. Fenrir can also out spell and trap cards as long as they're face up, meaning you can use this card to out a floodgate, or even just remove a continuous or field spell that the opponent might want that you want to get rid of. And if nothing else, going second, even if they don't use any monster effects, you can just attack with it and use it to help clear a monster from the field so that you can get damage in when swinging for game. This applied for the card in every deck, just as a great body with great effects, but it was only a short time before the second wave of Kashtira and a ban list slaughtering Tier Shizu would come together to catapult the deck into best deck status. With the release of Photon Hypernova, Kashtira would get an E-Telly of sorts, a new extender in the form of Rise Heart, and an all-new boss monster in the form of a Rise Heart. God, I love naming. Suddenly, a Macrocosmos on legs that can also disrupt plays made for the best deck, because that's just very annoying and effective to play against, isn't it? And that's before addressing the fact that Kashtira's other boss monster of sorts, Shangri Ira, would allow the deck to zone lock the opponent. Yeah, rank 7 that locks out zones from being played anytime a card is banished face down, something that the deck is doing at every available chance. Fenrir was obviously important in this deck because it's the Stratos. In Kashtira, Fenrir can not only search itself, or Rise Heart for the extension, but also Unicorn to further search out spell cards to really keep the consistency and strength going. It helped to add consistency to the deck that could help to trigger Shangri-Ira to disrupt the opponent while being consistent. So, you tell me, how fun is that? Also, in doing so, once you've triggered Shangri-Ira's effect, you can then cheat summon out Arise Heart on top of a single monster. This made the deck incredibly strong, and Arise Heart could honestly use its own video, from not only how strong it was, but also kinda how weak it was, and yet it defined the format because Macrocosmos is just so brutally strong. Zone Lock Turbo was a play that the deck made for quite some time, back when it was at its full strength, and even after some hits to the ban list, Kashtira remained a top-tier deck. And of course, for the entire time that it was good, Fenrir remained a staple. The hits on the ban list didn't really stop Kashtira's strength in the format the first time round, however, as Arise Heart was still Arise Heart whether or not they got to play 1 copy or 3. And so when Konami finally killed the deck, that's when Fenrir went back to its pre-Photon Hypernova status, as a splashable generic monster, at which point we go back to what I've said previously, the quote-unquote new Pankratops. It's of course worth noting that it isn't simply Pankratops 2, with there being some notable and important differences. One being, Pankratops does have higher attack, which can allow it to out a threat such as a 3-material Appaloosa, or the fact that Pankratops removes itself from the field for its removal effect, meaning that Pankratops can put itself into the graveyard while its effect resolves on the field so as to help play around something like, say, Skill Drain, or even just to combo well with a hand trap, be it an impermanence or a copy of Psyframe Gamma in your hand. There is of course argument that Fenrir should be limited much like Pankratops is, or even banned from people who really hate Kashtira, although I personally wouldn't go that far myself. Fears of it being too good in cash post Arise Heart ban were quickly proven wrong in the YCSs following the September 2023 ban list, and while Fenrir is a very good and very strong card, it doesn't really feel broken in the meta, nor even overly abundant. It's just good, it's common, but it's nothing crazy in the grand scheme of the game. Overall, Fenrir is a pretty damn good card. When Arise Heart isn't a thing, it allows for a very generic and strong tool for decks to use, capable of being part of a strong board going first, or helping pick apart a bad one going second. The lack of restrictions or locks keep it very playable, and whether it's used as a simple body for an extra deck play, or just to keep it on board and get that banish removal effect, it's a card that elevates all decks, but in a way that really doesn't feel oppressive. If it ever gets limited, I wouldn't be shocked, certainly not on account of its play rate, but so long as it's at 3, it's a fantastic card to include in a deck, and a newfound staple for the game at large. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Kashtira Fenrir. And feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smokin' Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.